Yo, what's up everybody? Jumpin' here, and today I'm going to be bringing you the Krogan Warlord, who is so much fun to play. He's a lot of fun to play, that's for sure. Alright, so there's a lot of things you need to know. So I'm going to go ahead and start with weapons. There's a ton of weapons I recommend, and they're really based on situation. The reason why I say that is because for some situations you probably want to be able to stun enemies, like phantoms. Phantoms can be this guy's biggest enemy. His hammer does take quite a while to actually hit the enemy, and what I've noticed is that sometimes when you're fighting against Cerberus, you'll try to smack a phantom, she'll stab you in the middle of your animation. So the best thing to counter that is to use a gun like the Geth Plasma or the Graw. Even the Falcon would be good. If you can stagger them, you're guaranteed to get that melee off and kill the phantom normally one hit, especially with something like biotic hammer. Alright, the Wraith is a good all-round gun. Grawl Spike Thrower, I already told you, it's another really good gun. I am going to be using the Reaker Carbine for this gameplay. This is a gun just good for taking down shields quickly, all that, and you still get the bonus melee damage. And actually the Venom Shotgun, I would imagine, could potentially be very good on this guy. I recently just unlocked this, so you guys can leave a comment and let me know. Do you want to see a gameplay with this? Do you want a review of this weapon? I'm willing to do it. I played one game with it. I'm a little so-so on it right now, but I just think I need to get used to it. But I am willing to do a full review of that gun. Alright, so like I said, I'm going to be using the Reaker Carbine for this gameplay. Another type of weapon I recommend is actually pistols. Pistols are really good. Scorpion would be pretty good. The Alkalite as well would be good, especially if they ever switch this gun back to the way it used to be where you don't have to charge it up. This will be one of his best guns. The reason why I say that is because you're able to put, at least now you're able to put melee damage and this new attachment, which is Power Magnifier. This increases your power damage. So this will increase your actual hammer damage to your electrical hammer, biotic hammer, all that. It's pretty nice in general. So that is I would recommend that potentially as well. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the build. So I go for tech armor, full tech armor. I like durability, melee damage. 40%, you really can't beat that. Power damage potentially could be really good as well, but I just think that I'm almost positive that the base melee damage for him is so high that 40% more to that is just going to add way more damage than 30% to the lower actual base power damage for his hammers. That's the way I feel about it right now. Durability, this is 50% damage reduction. That is fantastic. Now for biotic hammer, I really like the force and damage. Armor damage, now some people might think that you might want the whole combo thing. No, this guy is more selfish than anything. I mean, you really want to play him almost like that. Just most melee builds are more about being a loner than it is about being a full teammate. So that's the way I'm thinking about it. And armor damage just really works well. You're able to do so much damage to the boss. It's crazy. Alright, and the final one is number of charges. Very important. I highly recommend this one because depending on the weapon you're using, your recharge time can be very long. So you want to be able to have enough charges there to, well, get off the 2 swings and hopefully be able to put on another one of these powers right away. Now for electrical hammer, I really like the shields and barriers. It really does help. One smack of this to the ground, even if you don't hit the enemies around you will pretty much lose their shields. So besides the fact that that can really work out well for you, that also can help your teammates. So think of it like that. I like fire damage. Chill seems nice because it's something that you could do to bosses. It would debuff them 20%. But the effect only lasts for 5 seconds. So it's not really going to benefit your teammates much. And I would imagine it could benefit you, but only for one more swing. And since biotic hammer is the hammer you normally want to use against the bigger enemies like the bosses, this seems kind of worthless to me in some ways. So I like fire damage. The reason why is because if you hit the enemies and take down their shields, they'll start burning to death, and you can get fire explosions. It's pretty awesome. Once again, I like number of charges. 4 charges, that's a really good amount. Once again, the recharge time is kind of long, so having the 4 charges pretty much guarantees you to be able to get off the 4 melees, and by the time that you get done, you'll be able to put this back on or put on biotic hammer. I skipped Krogan Warlord. I don't really see much of a point for that. Now for his Warlord Rage. First thing I wanted to bring up about this is that he does get health regeneration. It's awesome. I'm so glad they did that with a Krogan. We've been wanting that for a long time. But I definitely recommend melee damage, aka like the rage damage. It gets up your melee damage and it gives you that bonus rage damage. Very good. Martial artist, this is so obvious. I would imagine everybody would want to go for this. And then the final one, I like the fitness expert for the final one. Give him extra health, extra shields, and better health regeneration, and better damage protection. Because he does get a lot of damage protection as well. So, that's pretty much it. I believe me, his melees can pretty much one-hit most things on gold. So, I don't really think it's too important to go for pure rage. And the other thing is that getting 2 melees, I'm so used to doing that with the other Krogans, I don't really mind having to get 2 melees to get rage. Alright, now for the equipment I'm going to be using Cryo Rounds 4, mainly for weakening armor, Strength Enhancer 3, Juggernaut Shields, and Cyclonic Mod 3. Alright guys, let's go ahead and get into the gameplay. Alrighty guys, this is going to be the gameplay. It's going to be on Glacier Hazard map, and it's going to be against Gaff. Now the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of my rocket launcher because I hate the rocket launcher on Krogans. I think it looks really stupid. And then I'm going to go ahead and start using electrical hammer. Now I love electrical hammer, and you will see me use it in this gameplay about 90% of the time. The reason for that is because against Gaff it is extremely effective. And honestly, the best faction to fight against with this Krogan Warlord is, well, Gaff. The main reason is that they cannot sync kill you. Reapers can be a little bit of a bitch, and Cerberus, if you're not prepared, can definitely screw you up. Now, the way to think about this guy is it all depends on the situation. So, what that means is that, depending on who you're fighting and what you're doing, you need to understand what hammer to use. So I highly recommend using both hammers because I think both hammers are really, really good. But it depends on who you're fighting and what you're doing. So a good example is if you're fighting against Gaff or Cerberus, the electrical hammer is extremely effective. If you're fighting against collectors and reapers, then the biotic hammer is extremely effective. So that will really like dictate which way you're gonna go in the gameplay. Now what's great about this guy, one of his best things, besides the fact that he's extremely fun to play as, I think he is one of the most fun people to play as in this game as of right now. I played with him just a couple times and I was having a blast. Although he's a little clunky, I gotta be honest, it takes a little while to get used to. But once you get past that, because it's not really that big of a deal, then he's so much fun. But one of the best things about him, honestly, is that he works really well against almost every faction. You just gotta know how to play those factions, and you gotta almost prepare yourself. It all depends on the situation. So for the hammers, like if you're going against Gaff or Cerberus, electrical hammer is normally the way to go. Collectors or reapers, biotic hammer is the way to go. But if you're fighting against like Gaff, you will see me use biotic hammer against, well, the primes, the bosses. Once they get down to their armor, go for it. Like, you will annihilate the bosses with this guy. 2 hits to a prime will kill the prime. And lucky for me, with biotic hammer, I get 2 hits. So, that is amazing. Now, another important thing to note with this guy is the weapon that you choose. That is the reason why I showed so many weapons in the beginning of this video, was because it's really situational. It really depends on the faction you're going to fight. If you're going against Cerberus, Cerberus can be a big time bitch. Mainly because of the phantoms. When you do his heavy melee on a phantom, if you don't stagger that phantom first, what will happen a lot is she'll have enough time to instant kill you before you get the melee off. So you definitely want to stagger those phantoms. The easiest way to do that is to use weapons like the Geth Plasma Shotgun, or the Graw Spike Thrower, or even the Scorpion if you want to try the whole heavy pistol thing. Those are very good guns to stagger phantoms first, and then you can go in for the melee to finish them off. One melee from this guy, especially a biotic hammer, because you gotta remember, she has barriers and health, so she's gonna take more damage from biotic hammer than she would normally from electrical hammer. One melee from that though will definitely kill her. There's no question, one melee will kill her. So the only real danger from a phantom is her being able to sync kill you. So you don't want that to happen. Now against Reapers, you might think Banshees are a big time bitch. Yeah, they can be, but really it comes down to you knowing when they can't grab you. Banshees can only grab you when they have the aura around them. But even if they do have the aura around them, they might not grab you as long as you can get like somewhat of a sneak attack in. So if a Banshee is somewhat distracted by your teammate, especially if you're playing with Juggernauts, because Juggernauts are so good against Reapers, guys. Juggernauts are amazing. If a Juggernaut on your team can get a Banshee to surround him, that Banshee will not be any real danger to you or your other teammates. So I love Geth Juggernauts. I love playing with them. And I tell people all the time, yo, you should play a Geth Juggernaut. But anyway, if a Banshee is distracted, you can run up and, you know, put your biotic hammer on, run up and get a sneak attack in. And that's totally okay. Once she loses the aura around her, she can't grab you. And then you can go ahead and melee her to death. Now, he kind of breaks the rules, or at least the general simple rules to this game. One of the most general rules from early on when this game first came out was never try to melee a Banshee. 9 times out of 10 things will, well, end up poorly for you. With him, he breaks that rule because he does so much damage to her, you really want to melee the Banshee. But you have to remember, you gotta get rid of that aura, or she has to be totally distracted on someone else. So when you're picking your weapon against Reapers, you might want to pick a weapon that for one has lower weight, because if you have way too much weight with him, then, and especially if you're going against Collectors or Reapers where you really want to use biotic hammer a lot, you want a better recharge time so that you can use his biotic hammer more. Because you gotta remember, you only get 2 charges with that particular hammer. Electrical hammer, you can have really any recharge time you want, and after you get done doing 4 hammers, you're good to go. Like, you'll probably have your recharge totally back by then. Now, electrical hammer is actually really good. Seems like a lot of people are thinking that electrical hammer really isn't that effective, but you gotta remember, depending on the situation, depending on the faction, electrical hammer is really, really good. So against any type of small groups of enemies, and that's really against any faction, small groups of enemies, use electrical hammer. It is amazing. And you'll see it in the gameplay, but what I'll be doing a lot of the times is I'll go ahead and I'll run right in between all the enemies, right? And I'll just smash the ground. And even if I'm not hitting one particular enemy, as long as I'm smashing the ground, every enemy in that radius will more than likely lose their shield. Then they get caught on fire. So what that means is that someone can come up and potentially, well, get me a fire explosion, which is awesome, right? Or the enemies might just burn to death from the fire. And another thing as well is that because of the radius, I can actually just continuously smash the ground, and just the electrical hammer damage itself might actually kill small groups of enemies. So in general, electrical hammer is extremely effective. Really, really good, and it can detonate most explosions in the game. So if you're playing with someone with like Snap Freeze or a Flamer, you'll get them a ton of fire explosions / cryo explosions as long as you sit in the middle of them. Now, the main difference between electrical hammer to biotic hammer is that, like I said before, is biotic hammer is really your boss killer and your more heavy hitting hammer. So the way to really use that is against things with armor, things, you know, bigger enemies, bosses, all that. Now, a couple important ones to bring up is like a brute, for example. Now, brutes are pretty fun to smash to death. Now, brutes can grab you, so you gotta be careful. You gotta definitely be a little careful from them. But in general, what you can do, if you can get a good hit in on a brute, you'll do like a big chunk of his health in one biotic hammer. I mean, you'll do so much of his health. And that hit will pretty much stagger him. So if you hit him again with the second hammer, you'll do another massive amount of damage to him. You might not stagger him, but you will at least do a massive amount of damage to him. And you probably will only have to shoot him maybe once or twice with your gun to kill him. Or you can just do a regular melee. Although that might be a little risky, especially if you're sitting through your recharge or whatever. That's the reason why I recommend to maybe use something a little lighter against things like collectors and reapers so that you can actually reapply your biotic hammer again more quickly. So that is something very important to note. Phantoms are really the biggest threat though when it comes down to you getting sync killed. If you get grabbed by a banshee, it's really like your own doing. If you run up to it when it has its aura on it, you have to pay attention to that. If you pay attention, you should be okay, to be quite honest. But phantoms, you know, they're just something else. Like the main reason why they're your biggest enemies is because you fight so many of them when you fight against Cerberus. So that's really the thing. Like you can have like 4 phantoms around you at once. So the best thing to really do against them is to just simply go ahead and use that Geth plasma shotgun or something along those lines, stagger them, smash them, and then, well, repeat for each of the phantoms. And if you do that, you'll be a lot better off than if you just try to melee them. So that's really your biggest threat. Outside of that, you know, this guy has a lot of things going for him. The first thing is that, well, he's a Krogan. So that means he has a lot of health and a lot of shields. But I do highly recommend a cyclonic for him. He is not invincible, guys. He can get dropped like a big fat rock. You have to remember that. You have to run in point blank range with this guy. You're going to be totally surrounded 9 times out of 10 with this guy. So a cyclonic really will help you. Another thing I really highly recommend, if you're going to play this guy and you have some friends, play him with some Geth Juggernauts. It is so easy. The Juggernauts will definitely draw a lot of fire for you. And they are just really helpful. And you can help them out by, well, being their close range ally. You have a massive AoE attack. You can kill any annoying enemies that totally surrounds them and all that. And they can always just pick you up if you die, which is really nice. There is something else that can really help you out a lot if you want to play with this guy. In this gameplay, we actually have a Volus with us, and the guy who played the Volus, he was a total badass. Now, he dies like maybe 6 or 7 times this game, but what do you expect? He's a Volus. But I honestly do think that Voluses now have more of a purpose than ever. The main reason is because, well, the Juggernaut's out now. This guy is out as well, and he greatly benefits from Voluses, that's for sure. But that Juggernaut is almost invincible when you have a Volus ally with you. The main reason is because not only does shield boost gives you an X amount of shields back, but it gives you shield regenerations over time. So, oh man, the Juggernaut is almost unkillable when you combine that. Now, if you watched my Geth Juggernaut Shields Are Ridiculous video, you might already know that his shields are pretty freaking ridiculous. But one thing you have to know about that video, which there was no commentary, nothing like that, so I didn't really explain it. But I'll tell you right now, one thing about that video was I was not using any equipment. I was using a Shield Booster 5 for gear, but I was not using any equipment. If I would have had a Cyclonic 4 on, I think I would have walked away from that whole reactor room with about at least maybe 70% of my shields left. That's insane. So Voluses are a lot. I'm not going to say, oh, the Volus is so amazing now, but I will say that he has more of a purpose now than ever, just because he really can help that Juggernaut, because that Juggernaut is so easy to stay with. Think about it. if you want to play as a Volus and you have a friend who wants to play as the Juggernaut, then you're going to be able to stay by that Juggernaut non-stop. A lot of times when you play as a Volus, one of the problems with the Volus is that you have to try to keep up with your teammates and help them out by giving them their shields back. But a Juggernaut is super easy to stay by. You're like, hey, there's this big giant Geth Prime on my team. Let me stand by him and continuously shield boost. If you do that, then the Juggernaut might eat the majority of the damage for you. But let me go ahead and get back to the Krogan Warlord, because I'm sure you guys don't care much about the Volus or the Juggernaut in this video. This is all about the Warlord. Guys, he is a lot of fun to play. If you like Krogans, if you like the melee, this is the guy for you. But one important thing to know, and this is extremely important, he's not invincible. He's pretty tanky, he has health regeneration, but he can be dropped pretty easily, especially when you're surrounded by multiple enemies. Now, if you are surrounded though, I highly recommend to use the electrical hammer. That's one reason why it's extremely important to have it, because you'll consistently hit every enemy around you, and hopefully you'll stun or stagger all the enemies so that they stop shooting you and doing meleeing you and doing all the things that they do. So that is extremely important. Now, against bosses, another thing I wanted to bring up is that it is pretty effective to go ahead and do his 3-hit combo. And the way you do that is that you simply just tap the melee button 3 times. You start with a headbutt, then you do a hammer strike, then you do a big hammer strike. Now that's an extremely effective way of going about doing his melee. Another thing I should bring up in this video is that if you do his sprint and then you do a melee, you'll do his normal Krogan tackle that we are all used to. And his heavy melee is of course the ginormous hammer smash. So that is all his melees in a nutshell. But I have to admit, although I would say that the 3-hit combo is really good against bosses, I feel like, at least on gold, that I can literally do about half of like most bosses' health with just simply doing the heavy melee. So, and if you really think about it, if you have the 2 biotic hammers or whatever, and you want to go ahead and just do that, just do the heavy melee twice. You got another thing that's important as well. This is very important, is that just like all heavy melees, he gets a certain amount of damage protection during his heavy melee animation. So I don't know, would he actually get the same amount of damage protection during his light melee animation, but I know for a fact that he probably gets a pretty good amount of damage protection during his heavy melee. So it will, by doing his heavy melee, you will definitely take a lot less damage. Honestly guys, I have to admit, I think the Warlord is a lot of fun. If you like melees, this is probably the best melee character in the game now. He is just pretty well designed. He works really well against all the factions. You gotta remember though, he's very situational. You have to know when to use your electrical hammer, you have to know when to use your biotic hammer, and you also need to kind of know about what faction you're going to be fighting so that you can choose your weapon for that faction. Remember, against Cerberus and those annoying phantoms, you definitely want something like the Geth Plasma or the Grawl or maybe the Scorpion, something that can definitely stun them or stagger them so you can get your heavy melee off without getting stabbed. The other faction that is pretty well known for grabbing you is, well, Reapers. What I recommend against them is to try to be sneaky if you're going to try to hammer a Banshee, or shoot the Banshee to make sure that it loses its aura so it cannot grab you. It's very important. And that's about it, guys. So I really hope you have enjoyed this. I think the Krogan Warlord is a lot of fun. He is definitely really good against most of the factions, and he's really well designed. So you guys go out, and if you can unlock this guy, have a lot of fun smashing everything's head. But besides all that, guys, please like and favorite this video for me, and have a very nice day.